At Morixa Tales, we believe in the power of storytelling. Our scripts weave together deep emotions and dramatic turns to deliver justice where it is most needed. Experience captivating mysteries where the truth eventually shines through, leaving a lasting impact on your heart and mind.
My phone buzzed with an elegant wedding invitation notification from my younger sister, Madison, followed immediately by a text containing a gift registry link. Opening it revealed not typical registry items, but 5 luxury demands: a downtown penthouse apartment worth $2.5 million, a Mercedes S-Class for $150,000, a Cartier jewelry set priced at $75,000, a year-long world cruise honeymoon, costing $50,000, and the smallest option being $10,000 cash for miscellaneous expenses. The message ended with Madison's words that made my blood run cold. "Pick whichever speaks to your heart as my loving sister." I stared at that outrageous list while memories flooded back, painting a picture of how we'd gotten to this point. Madison came into this world 5 years after me, instantly becoming the center of attention in our modest suburban home. Everything changed when our mother passed away from cancer just after Madison's 10th birthday, leaving me at 15 to navigate grief while watching our father fall apart. Within 18 months, he'd remarried Catherine, a woman from his office who came from old money and had very specific ideas about how life should be lived. Catherine transformed our simple household into something unrecognizable, enrolling Madison in private schools and buying her designer clothes while barely acknowledging my existence. I became the ghost in my own home, eating dinner alone, while they attended country club events where Madison learned to expect luxury as her birthright. My father seemed relieved to let Catherine take charge, never noticing how she systematically erased any trace of our mother, or questioned why I spent more time at the library than at home. College became my escape route at 18, cobbling together scholarships and working 3 jobs to avoid asking for help I knew wouldn't come. Those early morning shifts at the campus coffee shop and late nights coding for startups taught me resilience Catherine's money never could. While Madison posted spring break photos from Cabo and complained about her BMW being the wrong shade of blue, I built my skills one exhausting day at a time. My tech consulting firm started in a cramped apartment with secondhand computers and more ambition than capital. 7 years of 16-hour days, failed pitches, and ramen dinners. Later, I'd built something substantial enough to employ 30 people and attract major clients. Success felt sweeter because I'd earned every cent without family connections or trust funds to fall back on. Madison must have noticed my LinkedIn updates and the tech magazine feature about young entrepreneurs to watch, because suddenly she remembered having a sister. Her engagement announcement 6 months ago marked the first time she'd contacted me in 2 years, and now this gift list made her intentions crystal clear. What I discovered next changed everything. My best friend Sarah, who worked in social media marketing, called that evening with concern in her voice. She'd stumbled across Madison's private Instagram where she'd been documenting her wedding planning for months. The post painted me as the villain in her fairy tale, the sister who abandoned the family to chase money and now refused to share my success. According to her creative narrative, I owed her for leaving her behind with a stepmother she claimed was difficult, conveniently forgetting how Catherine had showered her with everything she'd ever wanted. One particular post made my hands shake with anger. Madison had written a long caption about how families should support each other, how my success came from opportunities our family provided, and how this wedding gift was my chance to finally make amends for years of absence. The comments from her friends ranged from sympathy to outrage on her behalf, calling me selfish and heartless based on her carefully crafted lies. My decision to select the $10,000 cash option took less than a minute, though I knew it would unleash a storm. The first message arrived within an hour of my RSVP submission. Madison's text dripped with disbelief and disappointment. "Really, after everything our family did for you, you're choosing the cheapest option when we both know you could afford so much more. Before I could craft a response, my phone rang with my father's ringtone, a song my mother used to hum that he'd never changed. His voice carried that familiar weakness I'd heard so many times when he chose Catherine's comfort over standing up for what was right. Catherine says you're being selfish with your success hoarding money, while your sister celebrates the most important day of her life. The accusations stung because they revealed how little he understood about my journey. Every dollar in my accounts represented nights I'd gone without sleep, deals I'd fought to close, and problems I'd solved without anyone to guide me. Yet here he was parroting Catherine's words, like a script, never once asking about my life or acknowledging what I'd overcome. By evening, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing with calls and texts from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Aunt Beverly, who'd forgotten my birthday for a decade, suddenly remembered I existed long enough to lecture about family obligations. Cousin Marcus, who'd borrowed $5,000 for a failed restaurant venture and never paid it back, sent a lengthy message about supporting each other through life's milestones. Madison's manipulation reached new heights at her bridal brunch, an event I learned about through Facebook photos since my invitation had mysteriously gotten lost. She'd created an elaborate gift display with elegant cards, announcing each contribution, making sure everyone knew who'd given what. Where my name should have appeared sat an empty space with a small sign reading, "Pending," that might as well have been a scarlet letter. The photos showed her dabbing at fake tears, while her bridesmaids comforted her the perfect performance of a bride betrayed by family. Comments poured in, expressing shock at my absence and promising to make her day special, despite having such an unsupportive sister. Each notification felt like another twist of the knife she'd strategically placed between my ribs. Sarah called again that night with information that made everything click into place. Through her marketing connections, she'd learned Madison had hired a social media manager specifically to craft her online presence during wedding planning. Every post, every photo, every story was calculated to present her as the perfect bride overcoming family drama, building her following and sympathy simultaneously. The most disturbing revelation came from an unexpected source. Grace, my executive assistant, approached me privately after noticing my distraction during meetings. Her sister worked at the bank where I'd maintained my first savings account, the one I'd opened at 16 and forgotten to close. She'd overheard concerning activity involving that account and thought I should know. My hands trembled as I logged into the old account for the first time in years. Madison was listed as an authorized user, something I'd added during her freshman year when she'd called crying about textbook costs. I'd meant to remove her access after graduation, but lost track among building my business. The transaction history made my stomach drop. Small withdrawals scattered across 24 months told a story of systematic theft. 200 here, 500 there, amounts calculated to fly under the radar of someone who'd moved on to bigger accounts. The total reached $30,000 money I'd never noticed missing, but that Madison had used to fund the lifestyle she presented online. Sleep eluded me that night as I processed the depth of Madison's deception. At 2 a.m, my phone screen illuminated the darkness with another message from her. This time she'd abandoned any pretense of subtlety or sisterly affection. Her words cut straight to her real intentions. "I know what you're worth, Rhonda. The tech magazines might not publish exact numbers, but I have my sources. That little consulting firm of yours cleared 8 figures last year, and your personal assets are substantial enough to make my entire gift list a rounding error in your portfolio. Pick all 5 gifts or don't bother showing up to my wedding. I deserve this after you left me behind with Catherine, after you built your success on the foundation our family provided, after you forgot where you came from." My fingers hovered over the keyboard, typing and deleting a dozen responses that ranged from rage to heartbreak. Each word I considered sending would only fuel her narrative of me as the bitter sister who valued money over family. Instead, I sent a single word that would change everything. Okay. The simplicity of my response must have confused her because she immediately started typing the 3 dots, appearing and disappearing repeatedly for several minutes. While she struggled to interpret my acquiescence, I opened my laptop and began the real work of understanding how deep this betrayal went. Banking websites and credit reports painted an ugly picture as I methodically reviewed every account, every card, every financial connection to my past. The forgotten savings account was just the beginning. Madison had used my information with the practiced ease of someone who'd been planning this for years, not months. Credit card statements I'd never seen revealed accounts opened in my name cards delivered to our father's address, where Madison still received mail. The charges read like a lifestyle magazine's wish list designer handbags, spa treatments, expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never visited. $50,000 of debt accumulated under my Social Security number while I'd been focused on growing my business. The sophistication of her scheme impressed me even as it infuriated me. She'd kept individual card balances just low enough to avoid triggering fraud alerts, made minimum payments to maintain good standing, and rotated between cards to maximize her spending power. A forensic accountant would admire the careful planning if they weren't looking at identity theft. My laptop screen cast harsh shadows across my home office as I documented everything, taking screenshots and downloading statements. Each piece of evidence added weight to the decision forming in my mind. Madison wanted all 5 gifts she'd get them, just not in any form she expected. Patricia, my lawyer and former college roommate, answered on the third ring despite the late hour. We'd supported each other through law school and startup life, creating an unbreakable bond of mutual respect. Her voice sharpened from groggy to alert as I explained the situation, her legal mind already working through possibilities. By dawn, we had a plan that would give Madison exactly what she'd demanded while protecting myself and potentially helping her recognize the magnitude of her actions. Every gift would be technically fulfilled, but wrapped in legal language and conditions that would force accountability. Patricia volunteered to draft the contracts herself, intrigued by the challenge of creating documents that appeared generous while containing carefully crafted consequences. The sunrise painted my office windows gold as I finally closed my laptop, exhaustion competing with determination. Madison thought she knew my worth, but she'd severely underestimated my intelligence and resolve. Years of building a business had taught me that the best contracts were those where everyone got what they asked for, even if it wasn't what they actually wanted. Monday morning arrived with purpose as I executed each element of my strategy, with the precision I'd applied to building my company. First priority, securing my financial life from further infiltration. I called every bank, closed compromised accounts, and placed fraud alerts across all credit bureaus. The representative at each institution noted the suspicious activity, building a paper trail that would prove valuable later. Patricia arrived at my office by 9 with drafted contracts that made me appreciate her legal brilliance anew. Each document appeared standard on the surface, but contained clauses that would trigger consequences if Madison continued her fraudulent behavior. We'd created a maze of accountability disguised as generosity, every word chosen to protect while appearing to provide. The real estate agent I contacted specialized in luxury properties and understood discretion. When I explained I needed to arrange a penthouse viewing that would become a rental agreement, she didn't question the unusual request. The property she suggested sat in the same building Madison had tagged in her aspirational Instagram posts, a detail that would make the eventual revelation more impactful. My conversation with the Mercedes dealership proved equally productive. The sales manager remembered me from when I'd purchased my own car and was eager to help with what he assumed was a generous gift. I carefully explained the lease structure I wanted, emphasizing the importance of specific contract terms. His eyes widened slightly as he understood the implications, but he agreed to prepare the paperwork. The Cartier store manager listened to my request with professional composure, though I caught a flicker of recognition when I mentioned Madison's name. It seemed my sister had already visited, attempting to select items she expected me to purchase. The security loan arrangement I proposed was unusual but not unprecedented, and the manager agreed to facilitate it with additional documentation about previous incidents. Planning the cruise gift required creativity since I needed to book something that appeared lavish while incorporating educational elements. I selected a 2-year future date that would give Madison time to resolve her financial disasters before traveling. The booking agent helped structure the reservation to include specific terms about refunds and additional costs, creating another accountability checkpoint. The cash gift preparation gave me the most satisfaction. Instead of simply transferring money, I worked with my accountant to structure it as a tax event that would require documentation. Every dollar would be tracked, reported, and legally recorded, creating a paper trail Madison couldn't manipulate or hide. Grace proved invaluable during this process, managing my regular business obligations while I handled family drama. She'd begun recording interactions after witnessing the first confrontational phone call, creating evidence I hadn't thought to gather myself. Her initiative reminded me why I'd hired her and why surrounding yourself with ethical people matters. By Wednesday, everything was arranged. Each gift met Madison's stated requirements while containing safeguards she'd never expect. The contracts Patricia created were works of art, legally bulletproof documents that would force Madison to acknowledge her past actions if she wanted to receive anything. We'd included clauses about fraud disclosure, credit verification, and financial responsibility that would trigger investigations into her previous activities. The most brilliant element was Patricia's suggestion to include a mediation clause in each contract. If Madison disputed any terms, she'd have to participate in formal mediation where all financial history would be examined. It gave her an out while ensuring accountability, the legal equivalent of calling someone's bluff while holding a royal flush. I scheduled the gift presentations for Thursday and Friday, timing them to build pressure before the Saturday wedding. Each meeting would occur in a public location with witnesses preventing Madison from creating alternative narratives about what transpired. Grace would accompany me to document everything her presence, a subtle reminder that I was treating this as the business transaction Madison had made it. Wednesday night, I received another text from Madison, her tone shifting from demanding to confused. She'd expected immediate capitulation or continued resistance, not calm acceptance. Her message asked about gift delivery, clearly anticipating packages or wire transfers. My response simply stated she'd receive everything in person, maintaining the element of surprise. The irony wasn't lost on me as I prepared for the confrontations ahead. Madison had spent years taking what she wanted through deception, never learning that true wealth comes from building rather than stealing. She was about to receive an education worth more than any gift on her list, though I doubted she'd appreciate the lesson immediately. Thursday morning dawned with an orchestrated campaign of emotional warfare that would have impressed a military strategist. While I prepared for the first gift presentation, Madison deployed her most powerful weapon, Catherine's influence over our father. The attack began with a call to my office that Grace fielded professionally, despite the venom being spewed through the phone. Catherine's voice carried through the speaker, shrill with indignation as she demanded to speak with me about my treatment of poor Madison. When Grace politely explained I was in a meeting, Catherine's response revealed her true nature. She threatened to call my clients to reveal what kind of heartless person they were doing business with to destroy the reputation I'd built through years of honest work. The recording device captured every word as Catherine spun a tale of family sacrifice and abandonment. According to her revisionist history, they'd supported me through college, provided the foundation for my success, and received nothing but cold rejection in return. The lies flowed so smoothly, I might have believed them if I hadn't lived through the reality of working 3 jobs while she bought Madison designer jeans. Within an hour, the assault escalated beyond phone calls. Madison had crafted a social media post that walked the line between defamation and emotional manipulation. Without naming me directly, she wrote about the pain of having a sister who chose money over family, who forgot her roots the moment success arrived, who couldn't spare time or resources for the most important day of her baby sister's life. The post included a childhood photo of us that twisted my heart. We stood in our mother's garden, Madison's chubby toddler hand in mine, as I helped her water the flowers. The caption read, Some people forget who held their hand when they were small. I still remember, even if she doesn't. The comment section exploded with sympathy and outrage from her carefully cultivated audience. My employees began receiving LinkedIn messages from anonymous accounts, questioning my character and leadership. The messages contained enough accurate details about my business to seem credible, while painting me as someone who'd stepped on family to climb the corporate ladder. My head of human resources brought the coordinated attack to my attention, concerned about the impact on team morale. The manipulation reached its crescendo when our father appeared in my office lobby that afternoon. Security called up uncertain whether to allow him access since he wasn't on the approved visitor list. I agreed to see him knowing this confrontation was inevitable but hoping it might happen privately rather than as Catherine had clearly orchestrated. Age had bent his shoulders since I'd last seen him at an awkward Christmas dinner 2 years ago. His hair had gone completely gray, and the expensive suit Catherine dressed him in couldn't hide how diminished he'd become. Yet when he spoke, the words belonged entirely to his wife, rehearsed and delivered without conviction. "Rhonda, this vindictiveness toward your sister needs to stop." He began settling into the chair across from my desk, like a disappointed parent summoning a wayward child. "Catherine explained how you're playing games with Madison's happiness, refusing to help despite your success. Your mother would be ashamed of how you've turned out." Invoking my mother's memory to shame me into compliance crossed a line I didn't know existed until he stepped over it. The woman who'd taught me integrity and strength would have seen through Madison's manipulation instantly. She would have been proud of my accomplishments and horrified by what her youngest had become under Catherine's influence. Grace entered with perfect timing, ostensibly to deliver documents, but actually ensuring a witness remained present. Her subtle nod confirmed the conversation was being recorded as I responded with measured calm that took every ounce of professional control I'd developed. "Dad, I'm giving Madison everything she asked for. 5 gifts exactly as specified on her list. The fact that they come with terms and conditions reflects the reality of adult transactions. If she's unhappy with that, perhaps she should examine why she felt entitled to demand such extravagant gifts in the first place." His face flushed as he struggled between the script Catherine had provided and the logic of my response. The father I remembered from before Mom's death flickered briefly in his eyes, the man who'd taught me to ride a bike and cheered at my science fair victories. But Catherine's influence proved stronger, and he launched into accusations about jealousy and selfishness that sounded hollow even to him. The meeting ended when I pulled up the bank statements showing Madison's theft on my monitor, turning the screen so he could see the evidence clearly. His face went pale as he recognized the implications, the careful documentation that would hold up in any legal proceeding. He left without another word, shoulders slumped with the weight of realizing his youngest daughter might not be the victim she portrayed. That evening, Grace revealed she'd been tracking the source of the anonymous LinkedIn messages. They originated from the same IP address as Madison's social media manager, confirming the coordinated nature of the attack. We compiled everything into a folder, Patricia labeled Evidence of Harassment. Another piece of leverage should legal action become necessary. Madison's response to her father's failed mission came through a group text, including extended family members. She announced she was considering uninviting me from the wedding due to my toxic behavior, and asked for everyone's input on whether families should be held to higher standards of generosity. The responses ranged from diplomatic deflection to enthusiastic agreement that I was being unreasonable. My cousin Janet, the only relative who'd maintained contact over the years, called privately to warn me about the family consensus building against me. She'd attended the bridal shower where Madison had performed a tearful speech about sisterhood and disappointment, complete with strategic pauses for tissue dabbing. The audience had eaten up every manufactured moment. Friday arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made the city skyline shimmer against a cloudless sky. I dressed carefully in my best business suit armor for the battle ahead. Grace accompanied me to the luxury hotel where Madison had requested we meet her presence, both professional support and strategic witness to whatever drama would unfold. The property gleamed with the kind of opulence Madison craved, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers that threw rainbow patterns across cream-colored walls. She waited in the lobby bar, positioned where other guests would witness our interaction. Her choice of location revealed her expectation of receiving the penthouse deed publicly, another Instagram moment to capture her triumph. Derek sat beside her, looking uncomfortable in an expensive suit that didn't quite fit his athletic frame. I'd researched Madison's fiancé, finding a decent man who worked as a physical therapist and seemed genuinely caring. His presence at this meeting suggested Madison had sold him a version of events that painted her as the wounded party deserving compensation. Madison rose when she saw me, her designer dress and perfect makeup, unable to mask the calculation in her eyes. She moved to embrace me, performing sisterly affection for anyone watching. I accepted the hug briefly before stepping back, maintaining professional distance that clearly frustrated her choreographed scene. "Rhonda, I'm so glad you came around," she gushed loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "I knew you'd understand how important family is once you had time to think about it. Derek, isn't it wonderful that my sister wants to be part of our special day?" Derek stood to shake my hand, his grip firm, but his expression uncertain. Something in my calm demeanor didn't match whatever narrative Madison had provided about her emotional, difficult sister who hoarded wealth while family struggled. Grace positioned herself discreetly at a nearby table tablet, ready to document everything. I placed the elegant leather portfolio on the table between us, enjoying the way Madison's eyes locked onto it with barely concealed greed. She reached for it immediately, but I kept my hand on the cover, ensuring she'd have to listen before receiving anything. "Madison has requested I've arranged for the penthouse you wanted." I began, watching her face light up with premature victory. "This portfolio contains all the necessary documentation for the property you specifically linked in your gift registry. It's in the exact building you wanted, on the floor you tagged in your Instagram stories." She practically vibrated with excitement as I slid the portfolio across the table. Her manicured nails scrambled at the clasped designer rings, catching the light as she extracted the documents inside. The joy on her face transformed into confusion as she began reading, her lips moving slightly as she processed the legal language. This is a rental agreement," she said, slowly flipping through pages of terms and conditions. "1 month's lease paid, then I'm responsible for $15,000 monthly. That's not what I asked for, Rhonda. I wanted you to buy me the penthouse." I maintained steady eye contact as Derek leaned over to read the documents, his frown deepening with each paragraph. "You asked for a penthouse apartment valued at $2.5 million. This gives you exactly that, Madison. The apartment you wanted available for your immediate use. The fact that ownership versus rental wasn't specified in your request isn't my oversight." "But I can't afford $15,000 a month." Her voice rose enough to draw attention from other patrons, exactly what she'd intended when choosing this venue. "You know that this is just another way for you to humiliate me." "Interesting that you know you can't afford it," I responded calmly. "Since you've been monitoring my finances closely enough to know what I can afford, I assumed you'd done the same due diligence on your own situation. Speaking of which, did you notice the clause about financial fraud disclosure in the rental agreement?" Derek's head snapped up from the document, eyes narrowing as he found the section I referenced. His voice carried the first hint of suspicion as he read aloud the requirement for the tenant to disclose any pending financial investigations or fraudulent activity. Madison's face went pale beneath her carefully applied bronzer. "What fraudulent activity?" Derek asked, turning to Madison with growing concern. "Babe, what is she talking about? I thought this was just about a wedding gift." Madison's carefully constructed scene began crumbling as she struggled to maintain control. "It's nothing, honey. Just legal nonsense Rhonda added to make things complicated. You know how she is always treating family like business transactions." I pulled out a second document from my briefcase, sliding it across to Derek. "This might clarify things. It's the credit check requirement for the rental standard procedure for high-value properties. Madison, you'll need to pass this before taking possession. Given your current credit situation, that might be challenging. My credit is fine, she snapped, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her lie. Derek's expression shifted from confusion to alarm as he began piecing together implications. The physical therapist who lived modestly and saved carefully was beginning to understand his fiancée might have significant financial secrets. Grace chose that moment to approach handing me a folder with perfect timing. Ms. Thompson, these are the additional documents you requested regarding the property's background check requirements. Her formal address and professional manner emphasized this was a business transaction, not a family gift. Madison's hands shook as she realized the depth of her miscalculation. The penthouse she'd demanded came with scrutiny she couldn't withstand, exposure she desperately tried to avoid. Derek's questions grew more pointed as he pressed her about what financial investigations I might be referencing. If you'd prefer not to proceed with the rental, I offered with calculated kindness, I'm happy to cancel the arrangement. Of course, that would mean you'd need to update your wedding registry to remove this particular item, perhaps explaining to your guests why the penthouse is no longer needed. The trap closed with elegant precision. Madison couldn't reject the gift without admitting she'd demanded something she couldn't maintain. Accepting it meant subjecting herself to financial scrutiny that would expose her theft. Derek watched his fiancée's struggle with growing dismay, beginning to recognize the woman he'd planned to marry might not be who she'd presented. "This isn't what family does," Madison whispered, tears threatening her waterproof mascara. "You're supposed to help me not set up obstacles and conditions. Mom would be heartbroken seeing you treat me this way." "Mom taught me that help isn't the same as enabling," I replied quietly. "She believed in earning what you have and being honest in your dealings. This gift reflects those values. You get exactly what you asked for with the responsibility that comes with it." Derek stood abruptly, gathering the documents with businesslike efficiency. "We need to discuss this privately," he told Madison, his tone brooking no argument. "Rhonda, thank you for your time and for arranging this. We'll be in touch about whether to proceed." As they left Madison trailing behind Derek's purposeful stride, I caught her last look back at me. Beneath the anger and frustration, I glimpsed something else, the dawning realization that her schemes had finally met their match. The penthouse she'd coveted would remain empty, a monument to ambition without foundation. Saturday morning brought the second act of our carefully orchestrated production. The Mercedes dealership gleamed under the morning sun, its glass walls revealing rows of pristine vehicles that represented everything Madison associated with success. She arrived with Derek and Catherine this time, apparently deciding she needed reinforcements for round 2. Catherine emerged from their car with the imperious air of someone accustomed to getting her way through intimidation. Her designer outfit probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, each piece chosen to project wealth and authority. The contrast with Derek's simple polo shirt and khakis highlighted the different worlds colliding in Madison's life. I waited in the showroom's private consultation room, having arrived early to review final details with the sales manager. Marcus, who'd helped with my own vehicle purchase, understood the delicate nature of this transaction. The contract lay ready in its leather folder, another gift wrapped in accountability. "Well, Rhonda," Catherine began before even sitting down, "I hope today goes more smoothly than yesterday's fiasco. Madison came home in tears over your cruel manipulation of what should have been a simple, generous gesture. Family doesn't attach strings to gifts." Grace maintained her position nearby tablet, discreetly recording as I smiled pleasantly at my stepmother. "How interesting that you'd mention strings, Catherine. I'm simply ensuring Madison receives exactly what she requested while protecting everyone involved. Surely someone with your business acumen appreciates proper documentation." Madison sat between Derek and Catherine like a defendant flanked by counsel. Yesterday's confidence had dimmed, replaced by wariness about what conditions might accompany this gift. Derek's presence felt different too, less supportive and more investigative, as if he was gathering evidence about the woman he'd proposed to. Marcus entered with professional timing, greeting everyone warmly before focusing on Madison. "Ms. Thompson, your sister has arranged something special for you. The Mercedes S-Class you specified in your registry latest model in the pearl white you mentioned preferring on social media." Madison's eyes lit up despite her attempts at caution. The car represented everything she'd dreamed of, a symbol of arrival in the social circles Catherine had taught her to aspire to. I watched her struggle between desire and suspicion, greed ultimately winning as Marcus produced the key fob. "Shall we take a look at your new vehicle?" he offered, leading us through the showroom to where the car waited strategically positioned under perfect lighting. Madison's breath caught at the sight, her hand reaching out to touch the pristine paint before catching herself. "It's beautiful," she whispered, then louder for the audience. "Oh, Rhonda, it's perfect. You really came through." She moved to hug me again, performing gratitude while her eyes remained calculating. Catherine nodded approvingly, already imagining the society photos of Madison beside her luxury car. Back in the consultation room, I produced the contract with the same calm efficiency I'd shown yesterday. "Here's the lease agreement for your new Mercedes. 24 months fully covered with you listed as the sole authorized driver. Marcus will walk you through the terms." Derek leaned forward immediately, his analytical mind already scanning for catches. He found them quickly, his voice tightening as he read key passages aloud. "The lessee must maintain continuous insurance coverage at specified levels. Any lapse results in immediate repossession. The lessee cannot have any outstanding debts in active litigation. Standard protections for high-value leases," Marcus explained smoothly. "We need assurance the vehicle will be properly maintained and protected. The insurance requirements are actually quite reasonable for this class of car." Catherine snatched the contract, her practiced eyes searching for loopholes. Her expression soured as she found the clause that made Madison solely responsible for any damages tickets or issues arising from use. No one else could drive it, and any attempt to add authorized users would trigger review of the lessee's financial standing. "This is ridiculous," Catherine declared. "Who puts these kinds of restrictions on a gift you're basically lending her a car with a sword hanging over her head? One missed insurance payment, and she loses it." "Which assumes Madison might miss payments," I observed mildly. "Since she assured me she's financially stable enough to demand a luxury vehicle, maintaining insurance should be simple. Unless there's something about her financial situation I should know." Madison's face cycled through emotions as she processed the trap. Accepting meant agreeing to terms that would expose her if she couldn't maintain the obligations. Refusing meant explaining to everyone why she'd turned down the exact car she'd demanded. Derek watched her struggle with increasing concern. "There's also this interesting clause," Derek continued, voice hardening. "Any attempt to use the vehicle for fraudulent purposes, including using it as collateral for loans or misrepresenting ownership, results in immediate termination and potential criminal charges. Madison, why would your sister include that?" The silence stretched uncomfortably as Madison searched for an explanation that wouldn't raise more questions. Catherine jumped in with bluster about family trust and unnecessary complications, but Derek's focus remained locked on his fiancée. The physical therapist who'd saved carefully for their future was beginning to understand the financial quicksand he'd almost entered. Marcus, maintaining professional discretion, offered to give them time to review the contract privately. As he stood to leave, he casually mentioned, "Ms. Thompson, there is one other matter. Our finance department flagged some concerns when we ran the standard checks. Something about previous attempts to use your sister's information for vehicle purchases." The blood drained from Madison's face as Derek's expression transformed from concern to shock. "You tried to buy cars using Rhonda's information. When how many times?" His questions came rapid fire as Madison stammered incomplete denials. Catherine attempted damage control, insisting it was all misunderstanding and miscommunication. but Marcus quietly placed a security report on the table, showing 3 attempted purchases over 18 months each, using my social security number with slightly altered personal details. The evidence was damning and undeniable. "This ends now," Derek announced, standing with barely controlled anger. "Madison, we're leaving. You're going to explain everything on the drive home. Everything, including why your sister felt the need to protect herself with these contracts." Madison's tears finally spilled over her mascara, running in dark streams. "It's not what it looks like. I can explain. Rhonda's making this seem worse than it is." Her pleas fell on deaf ears as Derek collected the contract, folding it carefully into his pocket. "I'll be in touch about whether we proceed with the lease," he told me formally. "Thank you for your transparency, Rhonda. I'm beginning to understand why you structured things this way." His look toward Madison contained disappointment deep enough to drown in. As they filed out, Catherine supporting a sobbing Madison, while Derek walked separately, I felt no satisfaction in the revelation. Watching my sister's carefully constructed image crumble brought only sadness for the honest relationship we might have had if she'd chosen a different path. Marcus returned after seeing them out, shaking his head. "In my 20 years here, I've never seen anything quite like that." The young man seemed genuinely blindsided. "Think he'll still marry her?" I gathered my things, considering the question. That depends on whether Madison finally tells the truth or doubles down on deception. Either way, she's learning that luxury comes with a price tag beyond money. The Cartier boutique occupied a corner of the city's most exclusive shopping district, its windows displaying treasures that cost more than most annual salaries. I arrived to find Madison already there with Catherine, their heated discussion visible through the glass doors. No Derek this time, his absence speaking volumes about yesterday's revelations. The store manager, Elizabeth, greeted me with professional warmth tinged with curiosity. We'd spoken several times during the week as I arranged this unusual transaction, and she'd been remarkably accommodating given the circumstances. Her discretion regarding Madison's previous visit had been particularly appreciated. "Your sister and stepmother arrived 20 minutes ago," Elizabeth informed me quietly. "They've been examining the set you specified, though there seems to be some confusion about the terms. Should I give you a moment before we proceed?" Through the window, I watched Catherine gesture emphatically while Madison stood with arms crossed, her body language radiating defiance. The previous day's failures had apparently strengthened their resolve, rather than teaching humility. I nodded to Elizabeth, following her inside where the confrontation would reach its crescendo. The jewelry set lay displayed on black velvet, each piece catching light like captured stars. The necklace, earrings, and bracelet represented exactly what Madison had specified in her registry, down to the catalog numbers she'd meticulously listed. $75,000 of crystallized perfection, waiting to adorn a bride who'd stolen to achieve her dreams. "Finally," Catherine announced as I approached, "maybe now we can complete at least one gift transaction without your ridiculous conditions and accusations. Madison deserves to wear beautiful jewelry on her wedding day without jumping through hoops." Madison's appearance showed the strain of recent days. Her usually perfect makeup couldn't quite hide the puffiness around her eyes or the tension in her jaw. Whatever conversations she'd had with Derek hadn't gone well, and she was directing that frustration squarely at me. "Hello, Madison," I said calmly. "The jewelry you requested is ready. Elizabeth will explain the arrangements I've made for your wedding day." I gestured to the store manager, who maintained her professional composure despite the obvious tension. Elizabeth cleared her throat delicately. "Ms. Thompson has arranged a security loan for this set. You'll have full use of all pieces for your wedding day and the following day. The security deposit has been paid and will be refunded upon the set's safe return within 48 hours, undamaged and complete." The explosion was immediate. Madison's voice rose to a pitch that made other customers turn. "A loan? You're loaning me jewelry like I'm some charity case who can't be trusted. This is beyond insulting Rhonda. You're trying to humiliate me." "You asked for Cartier jewelry worth $75,000. I responded evenly. This gives you exactly that for your wedding. The loan structure simply ensures responsible handling of valuable items. Many brides use borrowed jewelry for their weddings. Catherine's face flushed dangerously. This is spite pure and simple. You have the money to buy this outright, but choose to make Madison feel small. What kind of sister does this? What kind of person takes joy in another's disappointment? Elizabeth intervened with practiced diplomacy. Perhaps I should mention that security loans are quite common for special occasions. Many of our clients prefer this option as it allows them to wear exceptional pieces without the long-term insurance obligations. But that's not what I wanted. Madison's control finally shattered completely. I wanted to own them, to have them as heirlooms to pass down to my children. You're giving me costume jewelry treatment when I asked for real gifts. Interesting perspective, I mused, considering your history with borrowing things that weren't offered. Elizabeth, perhaps you could share what happened during Madison's previous visits to the store. The manager's expression remained neutral, but her words cut precisely. We do have security footage from 6 months ago showing Ms. Madison Thompson attempting to make purchases using documentation that wasn't her own. Our fraud prevention team filed reports with the appropriate authorities. Catherine's mouth opened and closed soundlessly as Madison went white. The revelation that her theft extended beyond family into criminal territory clearly shocked even her enabling stepmother. Other customers pretended not to watch while absolutely watching every moment of the unfolding drama. That's a misunderstanding, Madison stammered. I had permission to use that information. Rhonda had agreed to buy me jewelry for my engagement. Tell them Rhonda... I learned about your engagement from Instagram, I reminded her. The same way I learned about most of your life over the past 5 years. We hadn't spoken in 2 years when you visited this store. How exactly did I agree to purchases I knew nothing about? Elizabeth produced a tablet showing security footage with timestamp clearly visible. Madison entering the store presenting documents attempting to complete a purchase worth $40,000. The image quality left no doubt about her identity or intentions. Our policy requires prosecution for attempted fraud over $10,000. Elizabeth continued calmly. However, given Ms. Rhonda Thompson's intervention and agreement to handle this as a family matter, we've held off formal charges. That clemency is contingent on no further attempts. Catherine found her voice, though it lacked its usual authority. This is entrapment. You set this up to embarrass Madison. How dare you involve law enforcement threats in family gift-giving? I involved nothing, I corrected. Madison involved herself when she committed identity theft. The loan arrangement ensures she gets the jewelry she wants for her wedding while protecting the store's interests. Would you prefer I hadn't intervened and let charges proceed? Madison sank into a nearby chair, the fight draining from her as consequences piled upon consequences. Her whispered question carried defeat I'd never heard before. Does Derek know about this too? I don't know what Derek knows, I answered honestly. That depends on how truthful you've been with him. The security footage exists regardless of who sees it. The question is whether you'll continue this pattern or finally choose honesty. Elizabeth gestured to the loan documents waiting on the counter. The terms are quite generous, actually. Full use for 48 hours, professional cleaning included, and insurance covered by the security deposit. Many brides would be thrilled with this arrangement. But everyone will know it's borrowed. Madison's last protest came out as a wail. They'll see the loan tags know I couldn't afford real Cartier. The whole point was to show that I've made it, that I belong. No, I said firmly. The whole point was to get married to someone you love, surrounded by people who care about you. The jewelry was supposed to be an accent, not the main event. When did you lose sight of that, Madison? Catherine gathered Madison up like a wounded bird shooting venomous looks my way. We're leaving. This circus of humiliation ends now. Keep your loans and your conditions and your righteous judgment. We don't need anything from you. Actually, Madison said quietly, stopping Catherine's dramatic exit. I do need it for the wedding. Derek's family will expect appearances matter. She approached the counter with resignation, reaching for the pen to sign the loan documents. Appearances, I repeated softly. Is that really all that matters to you, even now, after everything that's crumbling around you? Madison's hand paused above the signature line. For a moment, the mask slipped entirely, revealing the frightened young woman beneath who'd built her entire identity on material possessions and social perception. It's all I have left, she whispered. If I don't have the appearance of success, who am I? The question hung between us unanswered and perhaps unanswerable in that moment. She signed with a shaking hand, accepting the borrowed beauty that would adorn her for exactly 48 hours before returning to its vault, like her constructed image returning to reality. Elizabeth completed the transaction with professional efficiency, placing the jewelry in an elegant case with detailed return instructions. The security tags Madison worried about were discreet, barely visible unless someone looked closely. But Madison would know they were there, feel their weight with every photo, every compliment. As they left Catherine supporting Madison's unsteady steps, I remained behind to thank Elizabeth for her patience. You showed remarkable restraint, I told her. Many would have pressed charges immediately. Family complications require delicate handling, she replied diplomatically. Though I must say I've rarely seen someone work so hard to avoid accepting help while demanding it simultaneously. Your sister seems trapped between who she pretends to be and who she is. The observation stayed with me as I left the store. Madison had built such elaborate facades that she no longer knew which walls were load-bearing and which were mere decoration. The jewelry she'd borrowed would sparkle at her wedding, but underneath the shimmer, the structure of her life was beginning to collapse. Monday arrived with a kind of dreary rain that made the city feel claustrophobic. The cruise line's downtown office occupied the top floor of a gleaming tower, its windows offering views of the harbor where massive ships departed for adventures Madison had dreamed of. She arrived alone this time, neither Catherine nor Derek accompanying her to this final gift presentation. Her solitary entrance told a story of its own. The confident bride-to-be who demanded luxury had been replaced by someone moving through the motions of a plan that had spiraled beyond her control. She wore designer clothes that suddenly looked like armor, rather than adornment, each piece protecting her from a reality pressing in from all sides. I'd arrived early to finalize details with James, the cruise line's luxury travel coordinator. He'd been intrigued by my unusual request, creating a booking that technically fulfilled every requirement while incorporating educational elements about financial responsibility. The documents waited in an embossed folder that looked like a gift but contained hard lessons. Rhonda Madison greeted me with exhausted resignation. Let's just get this over with. What creative torture have you designed for the honeymoon gift, a rowboat with a map, a swimming lesson voucher? Her attempt at bitter humor fell flat, lacking the energy for real confrontation. I gestured to the conference room where James waited with presentation materials about the cruise she'd specified. Even defeated, her eyes showed a flicker of interest at the glossy photos of exotic destinations. James launched into his presentation with professional enthusiasm, describing the world cruise in detail. Your sister has arranged a remarkable journey, Ms. Thompson. 67 ports across 6 continents, luxury accommodations, all the amenities you specified in your registry. The Sapphire Suite on Deck 15 with private balcony and butler service. Madison's facade cracked slightly, hope creeping back into her expression. You actually booked it. The full world cruise. She turned to me with genuine surprise. That's $50,000. You're giving me the full cruise. Every detail as you requested, I confirmed. James, please explain the booking specifics so Madison understands exactly what she's receiving. The coordinator's smile remained fixed as he revealed the carefully structured terms. The cruise is booked for departure in 2 years, giving you time to prepare for such an extensive journey. It's fully transferable to the dates you prefer within that window, subject to availability. 2 years. Madison's voice rose slightly. But the wedding is this Saturday. We plan to leave next month. Ah, yes, about that, James continued smoothly. The booking is completely flexible, but there are some financial requirements. Port fees, taxes, and gratuities aren't included in the base price. Those total approximately $15,000 payable 30 days before departure. I watched Madison's face as she processed the mathematics. The gift she'd demanded came with a price tag she'd have to pay, just like the penthouse and car. Each present technically fulfilled her requirements while forcing accountability she'd spent years avoiding. There's also the matter of the booking being fully refundable. James added, but only to the original purchaser. So while you can use the cruise, any cancellation would process the refund to Ms. Rhonda Thompson. This protects the gift's value while ensuring its intended use. So I can't sell it, Madison said flatly. I can't convert it to cash or trade it for something else. I'm stuck with a cruise I can't afford to take for 2 years that you'll get back if I don't use it. You're not stuck with anything, I corrected gently. You have 2 years to save $15,000 for the trip of a lifetime. That's $625 a month, less than you spent on designer handbags last year using credit cards in my name. The reference to her theft made Madison flinch. How long are you going to hold that over my head? I made mistakes, okay? Is this your way of punishing me forever? James discreetly excused himself, sensing the conversation had moved beyond travel arrangements. Once alone, Madison slumped in her chair, the weight of accumulated consequences finally breaking through her defenses. Derek's family is asking questions, she admitted quietly. About the gifts, about our finances, about why you're structuring everything so strangely. His mother actually asked if I have a gambling problem or hidden debts. Can you imagine how humiliating that was? More or less humiliating than discovering your sister has been stealing from you for years, I asked without malice, or finding out she's committed credit fraud that could result in criminal charges. We all have our humiliations. Madison. She stared at the cruise brochures spread across the table, glossy promises of escape from the mess she'd created. He hasn't called off the wedding yet, but he made me show him everything. Every credit card, every loan, every financial mistake. Do you know what it's like to watch someone you love realize you're not who they thought? No, I admitted. But I know what it's like to realize someone you love isn't who you thought they were. It happened when I discovered my baby sister had become a thief who felt entitled to everything I'd earned. Tears finally came, not the dramatic production she'd performed before, but quiet drops of genuine remorse. I don't even know how it started. Catherine always said we deserved nice things that you owed us for leaving. She made it sound reasonable, like I was just claiming my share of family success. Catherine says many things I observed. But you're 27 years old, Madison. At some point, her voice became your choice. Every fraudulent purchase, every stolen withdrawal, every lie to Derek, those were your decisions. She wiped her eyes with tissues James had thoughtfully left. The wedding might not even happen now. Derek wants to postpone until we complete financial counseling. His family thinks I'm a gold digger. Your gifts just confirmed their suspicions. My gifts revealed the truth, I corrected. If Derek stays, it's because he sees something worth salvaging beneath the deception. If he leaves, it's because the foundation was lies. Either way, you'll know where you really stand. Madison gathered the cruise documents with shaking hands. 2 years. You really think I can change that much in 2 years? Save money, legitimately pay off debts, become someone who deserves a luxury cruise? I think you can become someone who doesn't need a luxury cruise to feel valuable, I replied. The trip would just be a bonus for the person you could become if you choose growth over grievance. She stood to leave, looking smaller than when she'd arrived despite her designer heels. At the door, she turned back with one final question. If I change, if I really do the work and become better, will you ever forgive me? Madison Chiwa. I said gently, I'm giving you these gifts. I'm here despite everything. Forgiveness isn't the question. It's whether you'll forgive yourself enough to become who you're meant to be. She left without another word, carrying cruise documents for a journey that might never happen, and metaphorical tickets for a transformation that had to begin now. The Pacific Ocean waited beyond the harbor, vast and patient, indifferent to whether Madison Thompson would ever sail its waters or remain trapped in the shallow pools of her own making. Tuesday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine that seemed to mock the storm brewing in my family. I sat in my office reviewing the final gift documentation when Grace knocked her expression conveying concern mixed with professional composure. "Madison is in the lobby," she announced, along with someone who claims to be her attorney. "Should I have security on standby?" The appearance of legal counsel suggested Madison had chosen escalation over acceptance. I straightened my jacket and prepared for whatever desperate gambit she'd conceived. "Send them up, but stay close. Document everything." Madison entered with a man in an ill-fitting suit who looked fresh from law school, probably the only attorney she could afford. Her bravado had returned, fueled by righteous indignation and terrible advice. She marched to my desk like someone reclaiming stolen territory. "This is Bradley Hutchins," she announced. "He's reviewed your so-called gifts and confirmed what I suspected. You're not giving me anything. You're setting traps designed to humiliate me. He says I have grounds for emotional distress and defamation." Bradley cleared his throat nervously, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama he'd walked into. "Ms. Thompson, Rhonda, your sister has concerns about the conditional nature of these gifts. The contracts appear designed to expose her to liability rather than provide genuine wedding presents." I smiled pleasantly while Grace positioned herself to record. "Mr. Hutchins, are you familiar with the concept of conditional gifts in contract law? They're quite common and completely legal. Each gift fulfills exactly what Madison requested, with terms that protect all parties involved. But the intent seems malicious." He pressed, gaining confidence. "Forcing credit checks requiring financial disclosures, setting impossible conditions. These aren't acts of generosity, but deliberate obstacles." "Interesting perspective," I mused. "Tell me, did Madison explain why such protections might be necessary? Did she mention the $30,000 stolen from my accounts, or the $50,000 in fraudulent credit cards opened in my name?" Bradley's face went pale as he turned to Madison. "You didn't mention any theft. You said this was about family jealousy and withholding rightful support." His voice carried the dismay of someone realizing they'd been manipulated into a losing position. Madison's mask slipped again, fury replacing calculation. "Those are unproven accusations. You have no evidence I took anything. This is just another way to paint me as the villain when you're the one hoarding wealth." I opened my desk drawer and removed a thick folder, placing it deliberately on the desk. "Unproven." This contains bank statements, credit reports, security footage, and fraud alerts spanning 2 years. Would you like your attorney to review the evidence before making more false claims? Bradley reached for the folder with shaking hands, his expression growing more horrified with each page. Transaction histories, unauthorized access logs, forged signatures. The evidence painted an undeniable picture of systematic theft. He closed the folder carefully, like it might explode. "Madison, we need to discuss this privately," he said urgently. "This documentation could support serious criminal charges. Continuing this confrontation would be inadvisable." The young lawyer was clearly reconsidering his involvement in what he'd thought was simple family drama. "You're supposed to be on my side," Madison shrieked. "I'm paying you to get what I deserve, not to lecture me about evidence." Her composure shattered completely, revealing the desperate woman beneath who'd run out of schemes. "Speaking of what you deserve," I interjected calmly, "I have your final gift ready. The $10,000 cash you requested, prepared exactly as legally required." I produced the cashier's check with flourish, savoring the moment of revelation. Madison reached eagerly before freezing at the payee line Internal Revenue Service. The memo line read clearly, "Gift tax payment for Madison Thompson, donor Rhonda Thompson." Her face cycled through confusion, understanding, and rage in seconds. "This is a tax payment," she screamed. "You're giving my money to the IRS. This isn't a gift, it's spite, pure vindictive spite." She waved the check like evidence of my cruelty performing for an audience of two increasingly uncomfortable witnesses. "It's exactly what you asked for," I explained patiently. $10,000 in your name, handling the tax obligations that come with substantial cash gifts. Unless you'd prefer I didn't declare it adding tax evasion to your growing list of financial crimes. Bradley stood abruptly, distancing himself physically and professionally. "I can't continue representing you, Madison. This situation involves potential criminal liability I wasn't informed about. I'd advise you to seek counsel experienced in fraud defense." "You can't just abandon me." Madison turned on him with desperation. "I'll sue you too. I'll sue everyone. This is conspiracy, entrapment, family abuse." Her threats rang hollow, the final gasps of someone who'd weaponized victimhood until the weapon turned on her. Grace stepped forward diplomatically. "Perhaps we should take a break. Emotions are running high, and making threats in front of witnesses isn't advisable." Her tone suggested security was moments away if needed. Madison collapsed into a chair, the fight draining from her like air from a punctured balloon. "The wedding is in 4 days," she said to no one in particular. 4 days and I have nothing. No real gifts, no money for vendors, no brother-in-law who trusts me. "You have exactly what you demanded," I reminded her. 5 luxury gifts that could be yours if you met basic requirements of honesty and accountability. The fact that you can't meet those requirements isn't my failure. It's yours. "Derek wants to call it off," she admitted quietly. "His family hired a private investigator after the car dealership incident. They know everything now about the theft, the lies, the debt. They're threatening to boycott if he goes through with it." Bradley edged toward the door, clearly desperate to escape. "I'll send a formal withdrawal of representation," he muttered before fleeing. His rapid exit left Madison truly alone, abandoned by even hired support. "Everyone leaves," she whispered. "First you, then Dad chose Catherine over us, now Derek and his family. Even lawyers won't stay. Maybe I deserve to be alone." "Self-pity won't solve your problems," I said firmly. "You're not alone because people abandon you. You're alone because you've betrayed everyone who tried to love you. There's a difference between being left and driving people away." Madison looked at the check again, resignation replacing rage. "What am I supposed to do with this? Frame it as a monument to my failures? Show it to wedding guests as proof my sister hates me?" "You could deposit it and use the tax savings for financial counseling," I suggested, "or therapy to understand why you felt entitled to steal, or as the first payment toward restitution. The choice, as always, is yours." She stood slowly, aging years in moments. "The wedding venue wants final payment by tomorrow. The caterer is threatening to cancel. The photographer already has. This check won't cover a fraction of what I owe. Then perhaps a small ceremony is more appropriate," I offered. "If Derek still wants to marry you, knowing the truth, that's what matters. Not the venue or vendors or luxury gifts." Madison laughed bitterly. "A small ceremony. From the society wedding of the season to a courthouse quickie. Catherine will be mortified. Actually, that might be the only silver lining in this disaster." She took the check with steady hands, accepting the final gift that came wrapped in accountability rather than indulgence. At the door, she paused without turning back. "For what it's worth, I know you're trying to help in your twisted way, making me face consequences instead of enabling the fantasy. Derek said the same thing, that you're showing tough love." "Love without truth isn't love," I replied. "It's just comfortable lying. I hope someday you understand the difference." She left carrying a check that represented more than money. It was a symbol of choosing reality over illusion, consequences over comfort. Whether she'd cash it or keep it as a reminder remained to be seen. Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect weather that seemed to mock the chaos about to unfold. The Riverside Country Club had been transformed into Madison's vision of elegant excess, though I wondered how many vendors remained unpaid behind the beautiful facade. I arrived to find the parking lot surprisingly empty for a society wedding scheduled to begin in 2 hours. Grace accompanied me both as moral support and witness to whatever drama would unfold. We'd barely entered when Catherine appeared, her usually perfect appearance, showing cracks of strain. "This is your fault," she hissed without preamble. "Madison is locked in the bridal suite, Derek's family is demanding to see contracts, and vendors are refusing to work without payment. Your little stunt with those conditional gifts created this disaster." "My gifts created transparency," I corrected. "What anyone does with truth is their choice. Where's Derek? And more importantly, where's Dad?" Catherine's face tightened. "Your father is trying to negotiate with vendors. As for Derek, he's in the groom's suite with his parents and someone they describe as a forensic accountant. They're treating this wedding like a financial audit." Before I could respond, a catering manager approached with barely contained panic. "Mrs. Wellington, we need payment now or we're leaving. The check you provided yesterday was returned for insufficient funds." Catherine's attempt at imperious dismissal failed against the manager's determination. More vendors appeared, forming an impromptu collection committee in the elegant foyer. The florist mentioned unpaid invoices, the band leader wanted his deposit, and the photographer's assistant came to collect equipment since her boss refused to work without payment. I watched the carefully constructed fantasy crumble in real time. Each vendor's demand stripped away another layer of pretense, revealing the hollow foundation beneath Madison's dream wedding. Catherine's credit cards were maxed, her bluster unable to purchase what money couldn't cover. "Perhaps I should talk to Madison," I suggested, moving toward the staircase. Catherine grabbed my arm with surprising strength, her manicured nails digging in like talons. "Haven't you done enough? She's destroyed because of you. This should have been her perfect day, and you turned it into a circus of humiliation." "I offered her 5 gifts," I reminded Catherine, removing her hand firmly. "She couldn't accept them because they required honesty. That's not my failure, it's hers, and yours for teaching her that appearance matters more than integrity." The bridal suite door was locked, but Madison's voice carried through. "Go away, I'm not coming out until this nightmare ends." Her words slurred slightly, suggesting she'd found liquid courage in champagne meant for toasting. "Madison, it's Rhonda. Let me in. We need to talk about solutions, not problems." "Solutions." Her laugh held hysteria's edge. "The solution is for everyone to leave me alone. Derek's family hates me. The vendors want money I don't have, and you're probably here to gloat about being right." Through the door, I heard movement and whispers. Madison wasn't alone. I knocked again, more insistently. "Who's in there with you?" "Open this door now." The lock clicked, and the door opened to reveal not just Madison, but 3 of her bridesmaids, all in various stages of distress. Madison sat at the vanity in her wedding dress, a $10,000 creation that looked like spun moonlight and broken dreams. "We're trying to help," one bridesmaid explained nervously, "but she won't let us. She keeps talking about running away, starting over somewhere else." Madison turned to me with eyes that held more clarity than I'd expected. "It's all falling apart exactly like you knew it would. Are you satisfied? Is this what you wanted? To see me humiliated on what should be the happiest day of my life?" "I wanted you to have a real wedding based on truth," I replied, "with a man who knows and accepts who you really are, not who you pretend to be. Is Derek still here?" "His parents are probably convincing him to run," she said bitterly. "They brought a forensic accountant, Rhonda, to my wedding. Who does that?" "People protecting their son from potential financial ruin," I answered honestly, "the same way I protected myself with those gift contracts. The difference is Derek might stay despite the truth. Will you let him—" Before she could answer, commotion erupted downstairs. Raised voices, including one I recognized as Derek's father, carried up clearly. "We will not let our son marry a criminal. The evidence is clear. Theft fraud. deception at every level. Madison stood abruptly, champagne flute crashing to the floor. I need to stop this. They can't cancel my wedding. She rushed past me, wedding dress, rustling like angry whispers, leaving her bridesmaids scrambling to follow. The scene downstairs resembled a corporate meeting more than a wedding. Derek's family had commandeered the main parlor documents spread across tables meant for gift displays. The forensic accountant was explaining findings to a growing audience while vendors hovered nearby hoping for payment resolution. Stop! Madison's voice cut through the chaos. This is my wedding day. You can't turn it into some kind of criminal investigation. Derek emerged from behind his parents, his tuxedo impeccable, but his expression tortured. Madison, they're just trying to protect us. The debt load, the fraud, the systematic theft. We need to address it before making a lifetime commitment. Address it. Madison's voice rose. By humiliating me in front of everyone, by treating our love like a business transaction requiring due diligence. You treated it like a transaction first, Derek replied quietly. When you demanded those gifts from Rhonda, when you lied about our finances, when you built our relationship on deception. I'm trying to find something real beneath all the lies. The crowd grew as more guests arrived to find drama instead of nuptials. Catherine attempted damage control, but her own financial secrets were being exposed by the accountant's thorough review. It seemed Madison had learned her deceptive habits from an expert. I did it for us, Madison pleaded. To give us the life we deserve, the wedding of our dreams, the future you promised. I promised a future to someone I thought I knew, Derek said sadly. Not to a stranger who's been stealing from her own sister and committing fraud. How can I trust anything you've told me? Madison turned to me desperately. Tell him I'm not a bad person, that I just made mistakes trying to keep up with expectations. Her plea held genuine anguish, the realization that actions have consequences arriving too late. You're not a bad person, I said carefully. You're someone who made bad choices repeatedly until they became your character. Derek has to decide if he sees potential for who you could become or only who you've been. The wedding photographer who'd returned for equipment captured the moment inadvertently. Not the staged perfection Madison had envisioned, but raw truth in all its messy reality. The bride in her magnificent dress surrounded by evidence of her deception, the groom torn between love and logic, the families divided by revelations. I need time, Derek announced finally, to think, to process, to decide. This wedding is postponed indefinitely. His words fell like a judge's gavel ending Madison's fairy tale before it began. Madison crumpled the dress pooling around her like melted dreams. Her sobs echoed through the venue as guests awkwardly departed and vendors packed up unpaid services. The perfect wedding had become a perfect disaster, exactly as her choices had ordained. The country club emptied slowly, leaving behind the debris of Madison's shattered dreams. I found her in the garden, still in her wedding dress, but sitting on a stone bench like a discarded princess from a cautionary tale. Her makeup had run, creating abstract art from expensive cosmetics. Everyone's gone, she said without looking up. Derek, his family, the guests, even the vendors took back the decorations. Only thing left is me in this stupid dress I can't afford. I sat beside her, careful not to disturb the expensive fabric. Catherine left too, but not before the forensic accountant revealed some interesting information about her own financial activities. That caught Madison's attention. What do you mean? Your theft techniques weren't original, I explained gently. Catherine has been using your social security number for years, opening accounts, taking loans, building debt in your name, while maintaining her own credit. You learned from her, then repeated her patterns with me. Madison's face cycled through shock, understanding, and fresh anger. She used me all those times. She encouraged me to live beyond my means, to take what I deserved. She was stealing from me too. The accountant found over $200,000 in debts, traced to your identity, but benefiting Catherine. You're both victim and perpetrator, caught in a cycle of deception she started, and you continued. Oh God, Madison breathed, the full weight of realization hitting. I became her. I did to you exactly what she did to me. How did I not see it? Because she normalized it, I said. Made it seem like clever financial management instead of theft. By the time you understood the wrongness, you were too deep to stop without admitting everything. Derek appeared at the garden entrance, having changed from his tuxedo into jeans and a sweater. He looked younger, more vulnerable, like the man Madison had probably fallen in love with before money complicated everything. I heard voices, he said quietly. Madison, we need to talk. Really talk, without lawyers or parents or anyone else. I stood to leave, but Derek gestured for me to stay. No, Rhonda should hear this too. She's the only one who's been honest through this whole mess. He sat on Madison's other side, careful not to touch her. The accountant finished reviewing everything. The debt, the theft, the pattern of deception. My parents want me to run to have the marriage annulled if we'd gone through with it. Smart parents, Madison said bitterly. Why aren't you running? Because I keep thinking about sophomore year, Derek continued. When we met in that coffee shop, you were studying for finals, stressed about scholarships. You were real, then working 2 jobs and determined to succeed honestly. What happened to that girl? Madison's tears started fresh. Catherine happened. She convinced me I was settling for less, that I deserved more. She showed me how to use credit creatively, how to access funds that were rightfully mine. I thought I was being smart. You were being groomed, I interjected, to become her accomplice and eventually her scapegoat. When investigators come calling, whose name is on all those accounts. The 3 of us sat in strange solidarity, processing the layers of deception. Derek reached for Madison's hand, then pulled back the gesture incomplete like their wedding. I need to ask you something, he said, and I need complete honesty. Did you ever love me, or was I just a means to a lifestyle? Madison turned to face him fully. I loved you before I knew your family had money. Those first months when we were both broke students eating ramen and dreaming about the future, that was real. Everything got twisted when Catherine found out your family's background. She researched me. Derek's voice held new understanding. The sudden interest in meeting my parents, the pressure to get engaged quickly, that was her influence. She said I'd be stupid to let you go, Madison admitted. That men like you from families like yours were rare opportunities. She made love sound like a business merger requiring strategic planning. I watched Derek process this information, seeing him recalculate everything through a new lens. So when you demanded those gifts from Rhonda, Catherine scripted it, Madison confessed. Said Rhonda owed me for abandoning the family, that the wedding was my chance to claim my share. She even suggested the specific amounts based on her estimation of Rhonda's worth. But you executed it, I reminded gently. Catherine might have provided the playbook, but you chose to run the plays. At some point, her voice became your choices. Madison nodded miserably. I know. Sitting here in this dress I can't pay for at a venue that's suing us after losing the only man who ever really loved me. I know exactly how much my choices cost. Derek stood pacing the small garden. My parents are right that marrying you now would be financial suicide. You have massive debt potential, criminal charges, and learned behaviors that could destroy our future. I understand, Madison whispered. I don't blame you for walking away. But I'm not my parents, Derek continued. I became a physical therapist because I believe in rehabilitation and helping people rebuild after devastating injuries. Maybe financial injury isn't that different. Hope flickered in Madison's eyes before Derek raised a hand. I'm not saying yes to marriage. I'm saying yes to possibility. If you're willing to do the work, real work, not just promises. What kind of work? Madison asked eagerly. Full financial disclosure to authorities, Derek listed. Testifying against Catherine if necessary. Bankruptcy proceedings to address the debt. Financial counseling and therapy to break the patterns. And restitution to Rhonda, even if it takes years. All of that just for a chance. Madison's voice held wonder and fear equally. All of that to become someone worth taking a chance on, Derek corrected. The girl from the coffee shop is still in there somewhere. I'm willing to wait while you find her again." Madison stood wedding dress, grass-stained and irrelevant. "Rhonda, I know I have no right to ask, but would you help? Not financially, but with figuring out how to untangle this mess." I considered my sister finally seeing her clearly. Not the entitled princess demanding gifts or the sophisticated thief stealing my identity, but a lost young woman who'd been manipulated into becoming a weapon against herself. "I'll help," I agreed, "but only if you're genuinely committed to change. No more lies, no more schemes, no more shortcuts. The path back to integrity is long and difficult." "What about Catherine?" Madison asked. "She's still out there, probably planning her next move." "Let me handle Catherine," I said firmly. "Her time manipulating this family is over. Focus on your own redemption." Derek reached out, finally completing the gesture by taking Madison's hand. "We'll start with honesty. Complete, painful, necessary honesty. Then we'll rebuild from whatever foundation remains." As we walked back through the abandoned reception hall past empty chairs and wilted flowers, I saw possibility in the wreckage. Sometimes destruction is necessary for reconstruction. Madison's fairy tale wedding had died, but perhaps something more real could grow from its ashes. The gifts I'd given hadn't been what she wanted, but they'd revealed what she needed: truth, accountability, and the chance to choose differently. Whether she'd accept these harder gifts remained to be seen, but for the first time she seemed ready to try. 2 weeks after the wedding disaster, I sat in my attorney Patricia's office, reviewing documents that would reshape my family's future. Madison sat beside me, having traded designer clothes for simple, practical outfits that reflected her new reality. Derek accompanied her, their relationship tentative, but working towards something genuine. "The forensic analysis is complete," Patricia announced, spreading papers across her conference table. "Catherine Wellington has been conducting systematic financial fraud for over a decade, using Madison's identity as her primary vehicle. The pattern is sophisticated and deliberate." Madison studied the evidence of her exploitation with growing anger replacing her initial shock. "She opened accounts when I was 17. I was still in high school, trusting her to guide me, and she was destroying my credit before I understood what credit was. The total damages exceed $400,000, Patricia continued. "Between loans, credit cards, and investment fraud, she's built an empire on your social security number. The good news is this provides significant leverage for criminal charges." "What about Dad?" Madison asked quietly. "Is he implicated in any of this?" Patricia shook her head. "Your father appears genuinely ignorant of Catherine's activities. His name appears on some joint accounts, but the fraudulent ones are all in Madison's name. Catherine kept him in the dark while keeping him comfortable. I felt unexpected sympathy for our father. He'd chosen comfort over his daughters, but hadn't known the true cost of that choice. Where is he now?" "Staying with his brother in Michigan," Derek supplied. "He left after Catherine disappeared with whatever liquid assets remained. The house is in foreclosure. Apparently, she'd been taking equity loans without his knowledge." The scope of Catherine's deception impressed even as it appalled. She'd built a house of cards, reaching dangerous heights, using Madison as unwitting support beam. When I'd exposed Madison's theft, I'd inadvertently triggered the collapse of Catherine's broader scheme. "So what happens now?" Madison asked. "Do I file charges, declare bankruptcy? How do I separate my crimes from hers?" Patricia smiled slightly. "That's where Rhonda's offer becomes relevant. She's proposed a solution that addresses both restitution and rehabilitation while protecting you from the worst consequences of Catherine's actions." I leaned forward, having thought carefully about this proposal. "Madison, I'll cover the legal costs of prosecuting Catherine and clearing your name. In exchange, you'll work for my company in our accounting department while completing your financial counseling. You want me handling money after what I did?" Madison's voice held disbelief. "That seems like asking an arsonist to be a firefighter." "Former arsonists make the best fire prevention specialists," I countered. "You'll start in data entry, learning legitimate financial management from the ground up. Patricia will garnish your wages for restitution, ensuring systematic repayment of what you stole from me. Derek squeezed Madison's hand supportively. It's a chance to rebuild with structure and oversight, better than bankruptcy and potential prosecution. What about the $50,000 I owe you? Madison asked. That could take decades to repay on an entry-level salary. 7 years at the garnishment rate, Patricia calculated, I corrected, during which you'll learn every aspect of legitimate business finance. Consider it an advanced degree in redemption. Madison's eyes filled with tears, but not the manipulative kind she'd perfected. These carried genuine emotion as she realized the extent of my offer. Why would you do this after everything I put you through? Because you're my sister, I said simply. And because Catherine stole more than money from both of us. She stole our relationship, our trust, our family. I want to rebuild what she destroyed. Patricia produced employment contracts and restitution agreements. Everything is structured to protect both parties. Madison gains employment and protection from prosecution. Rhonda receives systematic repayment and an employee with unique insight into financial fraud. What about Catherine? Derek asked. She's still out there somewhere with stolen funds. The FBI is now involved, Patricia revealed with satisfaction. Crossing state lines with fraudulent funds triggered federal jurisdiction. They're very interested in her patterns, especially since similar cases have emerged in 3 other states. Madison signed the documents with steady hands, each signature representing commitment to change. When do I start? Monday, I replied. Grace will orient you to our systems and policies. You'll find our approach to financial management quite different from Catherine's lessons. As we prepared to leave, Madison surprised me with an unexpected hug. Not the performative embraces of before, but something genuine and grateful. I know I don't deserve this chance, but I won't waste it. Deserve is a complicated word, I reflected. We rarely get what we deserve, good or bad. We get opportunities to choose better. That's what this is, an opportunity. Derek shook my hand formally. Thank you for seeing potential where others see only problems. Madison's lucky to have a sister who believes in redemption. We're all capable of redemption, I replied, but it requires facing truth, accepting consequences, and doing the hard work of change. Madison's just beginning that journey. Over the following weeks, Madison threw herself into her new role with determination that reminded me of my own early career. She arrived early, stayed late, and asked questions that showed genuine desire to understand legitimate business. Grace reported her progress with approval. She's meticulous about documentation, catches discrepancies others miss. It's like she's trying to balance every past deception with present accuracy. The irony wasn't lost on me. Madison's experience with fraud made her exceptionally good at detecting it. Her first month, she identified 3 expense report irregularities other staff had missed. Her shame over past actions translated into vigilance against current ones. Derek began joining us for weekly dinners, building new relationships on honest foundations. He spoke about their counseling sessions, the slow work of rebuilding trust after deception. His patience impressed me, his commitment to growth rather than grudges. We're planning a small ceremony next year, he told me one evening. Just family and close friends. No demands for luxury gifts, no pretense about perfect lives. Just 2 people choosing each other despite imperfections. Madison laughed a sound I hadn't heard genuinely in years. Rhonda's gifts taught me something important. The things you demand rarely bring happiness, but the things you earn through effort and honesty, those have real value. 3 months into our new arrangement, Dad called. He sounded older, defeated by Catherine's betrayal, but finding clarity in its aftermath. I failed you both, he admitted. Chose easy comfort over difficult truth. I'm sorry. We all made choices, I replied. The question now is what we choose next. You're welcome to visit if you're ready to rebuild honestly. He came the following month, seeing Madison's transformation and my business success with eyes unclouded by Catherine's influence. The 3 of us shared dinner not as the fractured family we'd been, but as adults, choosing connection despite past pain. "Your mother would be proud," he said quietly, "of both of you. Rhonda for building something real, Madison for having courage to change. She believed in redemption, said everyone deserved second chances." Madison reached across the table, taking his hand in mine. "Maybe that's the real gift. Not penthouses or cars or jewelry, but chances to choose better, opportunities to become who we're meant to be." 1 year later, I stood in a simple garden venue watching Madison exchange vows with Derek. No designer dress this time. She wore our mother's wedding gown, carefully altered and restored. The guest list included only those who'd supported their journey toward truth, a small group that valued authenticity over appearance. Dad walked Madison down the aisle with quiet dignity, having spent the year rebuilding his own life after Catherine's deception. He'd sold the house, moved to a modest apartment, and started volunteering at a financial literacy nonprofit. His transformation paralleled Madison's, both learning to live within truth rather than illusion. Derek's parents attended cautiously, their initial skepticism softened by witnessing Madison's genuine change. His mother had even helped with wedding preparations, teaching Madison the satisfaction of creating beauty within budget rather than beyond means. As the ceremony began, I thought about the journey from that shocking gift list to this moment. Madison had worked diligently for a year, never missing a garnished payment, slowly reducing her debt while building new skills. Her progress reports showed consistent growth both professionally and personally. "I take you, Derek," Madison said clearly, "not for what you can give me, but for who you are. I promise honesty even when it's difficult, accountability when I stumble, and commitment to building our life on truth rather than pretense." Derek's vows echoed similar themes, acknowledging the work required to rebuild after betrayal. "I choose you, not despite your past, but because of how you faced it. Your courage to change inspires me to be better." When they kissed, the small gathering erupted in genuine celebration. These witnesses had watched Madison's transformation, supporting her through bankruptcy proceedings, therapy sessions, and the daily work of redemption. Their joy reflected investment in real change rather than surface celebration. At the reception in Derek's parents' backyard, Madison pulled me aside. "I have something for you," she said, producing an envelope. "It's not much, but I wanted to mark this moment." Inside was a check for $1,000, beyond her garnished amount. "I've been saving from overtime and side projects. It's extra payment toward what I owe. But more than that, it's a symbol. Every dollar represents a choice to do right instead of taking shortcuts." I accepted the check with unexpected emotion. The amount was insignificant compared to her debt, but the gesture meant everything. "You've learned what Catherine never understood. Real wealth isn't what you take, but what you build." Speaking of Catherine, Madison said quietly, "Did you hear she was arrested in Florida?" Patricia had kept me informed of Catherine's eventual capture. She'd been running similar schemes in retirement communities, preying on elderly victims with the same tactics she'd used on Madison. Federal charges would ensure significant prison time. "She'll face consequences she spent years avoiding," I confirmed. "But tonight isn't about her. It's about what you've built from her destruction." The reception continued with simple joy. Potluck dishes from friends' music, from Derek's colleagues' band decorations, Madison had crafted herself. Everything opposite of the lavish affair she'd once demanded, yet infinitely more meaningful. Grace approached during the father-daughter dance, showing me something on her tablet. Madison's latest audit report. She caught a significant error that saved us thousands. I'm recommending her for promotion to junior analyst. I watched my sister dance with our father, both having learned hard lessons about choices and consequences. Approve it. She's earned advancement through merit, not manipulation. As evening settled, Derek and Madison cut their modest cake while friends shared stories of their journey. Each tale highlighted moments of choosing honesty over deception, effort over entitlement. The collection of stories painted a picture of redemption earned daily through small decisions. No honeymoon cruise. Someone joked, referencing the elaborate gift that had helped expose the original deception. Madison laughed freely. We're camping at the state park for a long weekend. Turns out the best adventures don't require luxury ships or first-class anything. Just two people committed to exploring life honestly together. I found myself genuinely happy for them. The sister who demanded 5 luxury items had discovered value in simplicity. The woman who'd stolen for appearances had learned satisfaction in earning. The bride who'd wanted to impress strangers had chosen to commit before only those who mattered. "Thank you," Derek said quietly, approaching as the evening wound down. "For seeing potential when everyone else saw problems, for creating consequences that taught rather than merely punished. Madison is who she is today because you refused to enable her destruction." "She's who she is because she chose change," I corrected. "I just provided structure. The work was hers daily decisions to be better than before." As guests departed, Madison and I found ourselves alone in the garden, where she'd once sat in a $10,000 dress, mourning her shattered illusions. Now she wore our mother's gown with earned pride, her happiness genuine rather than performed. "I've been thinking about those original gifts," she said. "The penthouse, I couldn't afford the car, I couldn't maintain the jewelry, I had to borrow the cruise, I wasn't ready for the cash that became tax payment. Each one taught me something I needed to learn." "What did you learn?" I asked, curious about her perspective. "That demanding what you haven't earned is theft, whether illegal or not. That maintaining appearances without foundation leads to collapse. That borrowed beauty isn't beautiful if it comes with shame. That future dreams require present responsibility. And that money without integrity is worthless paper." The lessons had taken root deeper than I'd hoped. "And what about family? What did you learn about that?" Madison took my hands, her wedding ring, simple but real. "That love isn't giving someone whatever they demand. Sometimes love says no, sets boundaries, requires accountability. You loved me enough to stop enabling my destruction. That's the most valuable gift you gave." We stood together as sisters, truly reconciled, the ghost of our mother's memory finally at peace. The garden held no bitterness, now only growth from seeds planted in difficult soil. Madison's wedding had happened after all. Not the spectacle she'd originally envisioned, but something infinitely more precious. 5 years after that tumultuous wedding gift list, I sat in my office reviewing quarterly reports when Madison knocked. She entered with confidence earned through consistent accomplishment, her business suit modest but professional. The woman before me bore little resemblance to the entitled sister who demanded luxury. "The Ferguson audit is complete," she announced, placing a comprehensive report on my desk. "I identified systematic overcharging that saved us $90,000 annually. Also, I have a proposal for a new fraud detection protocol based on patterns I've observed." I reviewed her work with pride. Madison had become one of our most valuable employees, her unique understanding of deception making her exceptionally skilled at protecting others from it. Her promotion to senior financial analyst had been earned through merit alone. "Excellent work," I said. "Present your protocol at Monday's meeting. The partners will want to hear this directly from you." Madison beamed, the expression genuine rather than calculated. "There's something else. Derek and I have news. We're pregnant. 12 weeks along, everything healthy." I circled the desk to embrace her properly. "Congratulations. How are you feeling? How's Derek handling impending fatherhood?" "Excited and terrified." She laughed. "We've been saving carefully, living below our means. We can actually afford this baby without debt or schemes. It feels surreal doing things the right way." Through my window, the city stretched endlessly, full of people making choices between easy deception and difficult truth. Madison had traveled from one extreme to the other, learning that integrity required daily decisions rather than grand gestures. "Any requests for baby shower gifts?" I asked teasingly. "Perhaps a nursery in a penthouse designer stroller, diamond-encrusted pacifier." Madison laughed freely at the reference to her past demands. Actually, we're asking for contributions to the baby's education fund. Derek and I want our child to understand that real security comes from knowledge and character, not material possessions. The transformation was complete, from demanding luxury to valuing education, from taking shortcuts to building foundations. I thought of our mother who died before seeing what her daughters would become. Her absence had created the void Catherine filled with poison, but ultimately her early lessons had survived. "I've been thinking about Mom lately," Madison said quietly. "How different things might have been if she'd lived, but then I realize her death isn't what sent me off course. My choices did, and my choices brought me back." "With significant help from consequences," I reminded her. "Sometimes hitting bottom is the only way to recognize which way is up." Madison nodded thoughtfully. "I've actually been working with a nonprofit that helps identity theft victims, sharing my story both as perpetrator and victim, helping others recognize the signs. It's my way of balancing the scales beyond just financial restitution." Her journey from taker to giver-destroyer to protector illustrated redemption's possibility when someone genuinely committed to change. The nonprofit work wasn't court-ordered or professionally required. It came from authentic desire to help others avoid her mistakes. "How's Dad?" I asked, knowing Madison visited him regularly. "Good. He's dating someone from his volunteer group, a widow who understands choosing comfort over truth and regretting it. They're taking things slowly, building on honesty. He says Catherine taught him what not to want in a partner." Catherine herself remained in federal prison, her schemes having finally caught up with her. The investigation had revealed victims across multiple states, elderly people and young adults alike, stripped of security by her sophisticated fraud. Her sentence reflected the scope of damage: 15 years with little possibility of early release. "Do you ever visit her?" I asked carefully. Madison shook her head. "She wrote once trying to manipulate me into advocating for leniency. The letter was a masterclass in emotional manipulation, hitting every guilt button she'd installed. I gave it to my therapist instead of responding. Some relationships can't be redeemed." The wisdom in recognizing irredeemable situations marked another aspect of Madison's growth. Not everyone who hurt us deserved endless chances. Some people remained committed to deception despite consequences, and protecting ourselves from them showed strength rather than cruelty. "I should get back," Madison said. "Derek's making dinner tonight. We take turns cooking another small equality that makes our marriage work. No more expecting to be served while giving nothing in return." After she left, I reflected on the unexpected journey from that shocking gift list to this moment of quiet satisfaction. Madison's demands had seemed outrageous then: a penthouse luxury car designer, jewelry world cruise, and cash. Yet in refusing to enable those demands, I'd given her something far more valuable. The penthouse she couldn't maintain had taught her that homes required more than down payments. The car she couldn't afford had shown her that status symbols carried hidden costs. The jewelry she had to borrow had illustrated that beauty meant nothing if it came with shame. The cruise she couldn't take had demonstrated that dreams required present planning. The cash transformed to tax payment had revealed that money without accountability was meaningless. Each rejected luxury had become a lesson in reality. Each consequence had carved away entitlement to reveal capability. Each difficult choice had built strength that easy gifts would have destroyed. The sister who demanded everything had learned to build something, and that made all the difference. Looking at our company's success built on integrity and sustained through honest dealing, I understood that Madison's transformation reflected the same principles. We couldn't demand success. We had to construct it carefully through daily decisions, aligned with truth rather than appearance. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "Thank you again for believing in my ability to change. See you Sunday for dinner. I'm cooking. Nothing fancy, just real food for real family." Real food for real family. The phrase captured everything about our journey from artificial demands to authentic connection. No luxury gifts, required just presence and truth and commitment to being better than we were before. The city lights began twinkling as evening approached, each light representing someone making choices between easy and right. Madison had chosen right eventually after exhausting every other option, but she'd chosen and continued choosing, and that made her story one of hope rather than caution. 6 months later, I stood in the hospital room holding my nephew, James William, named for both grandfathers, but carrying none of their baggage. Madison held him with wonder, Derek beside her with protective pride. The baby represented new beginnings untainted by past schemes, a fresh start built on the solid foundation his parents had worked to create. "Want to know something funny?" Madison whispered, adjusting James's tiny hat. Catherine sent another letter, this time asking if I'd put money in her commissary account since she's family and families support each other. The irony was apparently lost on her. "Did you respond?" Derek asked, though his tone suggested he knew the answer. "I donated the equivalent amount to the Identity Theft Victims Fund instead," Madison replied. "Seemed more appropriate than funding someone who refuses to acknowledge their harm." James stirred, making the small sounds that captivated new parents. In his innocence lay potential for any future, but his parents' journey would teach him that character mattered more than possessions, that earning surpassed, taking that truth, built while deception destroyed. "He's perfect," I said, meaning more than just the baby. The whole scene, reformed sister, supportive partner, honest grandparents, authentic relationships, represented perfection earned through imperfection faced. "We're starting his college fund next month," Derek mentioned. "Small monthly amounts we can actually afford. By the time he's 18, he'll have enough for state school without loans. No schemes, no shortcuts, just consistent saving." The contrast with Madison's old approach to money couldn't have been starker. Where once she'd demanded hundreds of thousands in gifts, now she planned decades ahead in $100 increments. The woman who'd stolen for instant gratification now demonstrated patience that would benefit the next generation. "I have something for him," I said, producing an envelope. "Not cash, but something more valuable. It's a letter to be opened on his 18th birthday telling the story of how his mother transformed from someone who took to someone who gives. A reminder that our worst mistakes don't define us if we choose to learn from them." Madison accepted the envelope with tears. "You're ensuring he knows the whole truth, that his mother wasn't perfect but chose to become better. Thank you." As I left the hospital, I thought about the journey from that wedding gift list to this moment. Every demand Madison had made carried seeds of the lessons she needed. By refusing to enable her destruction, I'd participated in her reconstruction. The gifts she'd wanted would have deepened her deception. The gifts she'd received, consequences, accountability, and opportunities for redemption, had saved her life. The city buzzed with evening activity as I drove home. Somewhere another family was probably dealing with similar dynamics. Entitlement, meeting, reality deception, confronting truth relationships, hanging in the balance between enabling and empowering. I hoped they'd find their way to the harder but better path. Madison's story had become one of my company's case studies in fraud detection and redemption. With her permission, we shared it in trainings, showing how sophisticated deception developed and why addressing root causes mattered more than punishment alone. Every time someone recognized their own patterns in her story and chose differently, the gift multiplied. That night, I found an old photo of Madison and me in our mother's garden, the same one she'd used to manipulate sympathy during her schemes. But now I saw it differently. Not as ammunition for guilt, but as reminder of potential. The little girl holding my hand had been worth saving even when the woman she'd become seemed irredeemable. My phone lit up with a text from Dad. "Thank you for showing us both that love sometimes means saying no. Your mother would be proud of the woman you've become and the sister you've helped Madison become." The message completed a circle started years ago with a different text, one demanding luxury gifts and threatening exclusion. Between those two messages lay a universe of pain, growth, and ultimately redemption. Not the easy redemption of forgiveness without change, but the hard-won transformation that came from facing truth and choosing differently. As I prepared for bed, I thought about the questions people always asked when I shared this story. How could Madison have stolen from family? How could Catherine have manipulated so effectively? How could Derek have stayed despite the deception? How could I have structured consequences that taught rather than merely punished? The answer to all those questions was the same choice. Madison chose theft until she chose honesty. Catherine chose manipulation until consequences removed that option. Derek chose to see potential beyond problems. I chose to believe redemption possible even when evidence suggested otherwise. Every moment contained choices between easy wrong and difficult right, and those choices accumulated into character. Madison's transformation hadn't been magical or sudden. It had been built through thousands of small decisions, choosing to work rather than steal, to save, rather than spend, to face shame, rather than create new deceptions. Each choice had been a gift to her future self, creating the woman who now protected others from the crimes she'd once committed. The greatest gift hadn't been the penthouse or car or jewelry or cruise or cash she'd demanded. It had been the opportunity to discover who she could become when stripped of shortcuts and schemes. That discovery, painful and slow and ultimately liberating, was worth more than all the luxury items in her original list. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for both growth and regression. Madison would face them as a senior analyst, wife, mother, and reformed person, still paying restitution for past crimes. But she'd face them honestly, and that made all the difference between the life she'd demanded and the one she'd earned. Looking back at that shocking gift list, I felt gratitude for the clarity it had provided. Madison's demands had forced confrontation with years of enabling deception. Her outrageous expectations had made halfway measures impossible. Her complete disregard for others had required equally complete restructuring of our relationship. Sometimes the worst moments catalyze the best changes. Madison's wedding gift list had been one of those moments, shocking in its entitlement, perfect in its revelation of how far she'd fallen, ultimately valuable in forcing the confrontation that began her redemption. As sleep approached, I wondered what gifts life would demand next, what lessons would come wrapped in crisis and conflict. Whatever they were, Madison's story had taught me that transformation was possible for anyone willing to do the work. The gifts we really need rarely match the ones we think we want, but accepting that difference opens doors to becoming who we're meant to be. The city slept outside my window, millions of souls wrestling with their own choices between truth and deception, ease and integrity. Some would choose, as Madison initially had, seeking shortcuts and schemes. Others would face consequences and choose transformation. The gift of possibility remained available to all, waiting only for the courage to unwrap it. In the end, that's what Madison's story illustrated. Not that people were good or bad, but that we all existed in the space between our worst impulses and best possibilities. The journey from one to the other required guides willing to provide structure rather than enable destruction. I'd been that guide for Madison as others had been for me in different ways. The gift multiplied through generations, each person who chose growth over comfort, adding to humanity's collective wisdom. James would grow up knowing his mother's full story, understanding that perfection wasn't required for love, but that honesty was essential for trust. He'd learned that gifts came in many forms, that the most valuable ones often appeared as obstacles, forcing us to become stronger. His life would be built on the foundation his parents had constructed from the rubble of their earlier choices. And somewhere in the future, when faced with his own moments of temptation, perhaps he'd remember that his mother had once demanded 5 luxury gifts, but received instead the priceless opportunity to discover her true worth. That memory might guide him toward integrity, adding another link in the chain of redemption that began with a shocking wedding gift list and transformed into a legacy of truth. The gifts we demand reveal who we are. The gifts we accept show who we're becoming. The gifts we give demonstrate who we've chosen to be. Madison had traveled the full journey from demanding to accepting to giving, and in that transformation lay hope for anyone willing to exchange comfortable lies for uncomfortable truth. As I finally drifted to sleep, one last thought surfaced. Thank you, Madison, for demanding those 5 impossible gifts. Without them, we might have continued the dance of enabling and entitlement forever. Your greed became our grace, your schemes, our salvation. The sister who'd tried to take everything had ultimately given me the greatest gift, the opportunity to help her discover that earning beats, taking every time. The story that began with demands for luxury ended with gratitude for lessons. The wedding that collapsed in scandal had led to a marriage built on truth. The theft that should have destroyed our relationship had ultimately strengthened it through the alchemy of accountability. 5 gifts demanded 5 lessons learned, countless lives changed by choosing the harder, better path. If you've stayed with Rhonda and Madison's story until the end, you've witnessed the power of choosing truth over comfortable deception. We all face moments when taking shortcuts seems easier than building honestly. Have you ever had someone in your life demand unreasonable things from you? How did you handle it? What did you learn from setting boundaries instead of enabling destructive behavior? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else facing similar challenges. If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes to dynamics in your own relationships, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. These stories of redemption and growth need to be heard, and you can help by sharing this video with anyone who might benefit from Madison's journey. Thank you for spending this time with us, for believing that people can change, and for understanding that sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is the opportunity to face consequences and grow. Remember, the gifts you truly need rarely match the ones you think you want, but accepting that difference opens the door to becoming who you're meant to be. Until next time, may you have the wisdom to recognize the difference between enabling and empowering, the courage to choose truth over comfort, and the grace to believe in redemption, both for others and for yourself.